The rain was coming down hard that night, turning the city streets into shimmering rivers under the glow of the streetlights. Emma Brown wrapped her arms tightly around herself as she ran toward the pharmacy. The icy wind cut through her thin coat, but she didn't have time to worry about that. Lily needed the medicine. Behind her, in the back seat of the car, Lily let out a weak cough, her tiny voice barely audible over the storm. Emma felt a pang of guilt for leaving her alone, even if it was only for a few minutes. There was no other choice. When she parked in the closest available spot near the pharmacy, she didn't even notice the sign designating it as a spot for disabled individuals. With the medicine in hand, she rushed back to the car as quickly as she could, only to be greeted by something that made her heart sink. A white slip of paper tucked under the windshield wiper. A ticket. Emma grabbed it, scanning the words as if she hoped it was a mistake. $200. She took a deep breath, trying to keep the rising despair at bay. There was no way she could afford it. The following days were a blur of exhaustion and worry. Emma worked extra shifts at the small cafe where she was a waitress, all while trying to keep up with Lily's needs. But the summons came sooner than expected. She was required to appear in court in 2 weeks to contest or pay the fine. On the appointed day, Emma woke up early, her heart heavy. Lily, now recovered, was excited to leave the house, but Emma knew this wasn't a fun outing. With Lily holding her hand, she entered the courthouse, where the air seemed thick with formality and judgment. The courtroom was packed with people waiting for their hearings. Emma watched their tired, anxious faces as she held Lily on her lap. When her name was called, her legs felt shaky as she walked to the front of the room. Judge Jonathan Morgan was everything people said he was, stern, with piercing eyes and a demeanor that seemed devoid of any softness. He adjusted his glasses and glanced at the file in front of him. "Ms. Brown, you were fined for parking in a disabled parking spot. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" Emma took a deep breath, feeling the words stick in her throat. "Sir, it was a mistake. My daughter was sick and I just needed to get her medicine. I didn't see the sign." Her voice sounded weak, even to her, as if her explanation was already being crushed under the weight of the rules Judge Morgan represented. He looked up at her, assessing her in silence, and then Lily's clear voice broke through the stillness of the room. "Mom, can we have pancakes after this?" The courtroom fell silent for a moment before scattered chuckles rippled through the crowd. Emma felt her face flush, but to her surprise, the judge didn't look annoyed. In fact, his lips almost curved into a restrained smile. He glanced at Lily, tilting his head slightly. "Pancakes? You like pancakes?" he asked. "Yes, with lots of syrup," Lily replied, swinging her little legs, completely oblivious to the gravity of the situation. Something shifted in the judge's expression at that moment. He looked back at Emma, and for the first time, he seemed less like a symbol of the law and more like a person. "We're going to take a short recess," he announced, catching everyone off guard. Emma felt the tension in the room ease. As murmurs spread among those present, she glanced at Lily and saw her daughter smiling, as if she already knew that somehow that moment had changed everything. Emma sat back down, holding Lily in her lap, as the unexpected recess unfolded around them. People in the room whispered, exchanging curious glances. Judge Morgan was known for his rigidity and punctuality. Any deviation from his protocol was practically an event. She looked at her daughter, who was swinging her legs carefreely, playing with a loose ribbon on her dress. Lily had no idea of the impact her question about pancakes had made, but Emma knew that something important had changed in the atmosphere of the courtroom. Minutes later, the side door opened and Judge Morgan returned, adjusting his robe with an automatic gesture. Silence fell again as he took his seat on the bench. He adjusted his glasses, observing Emma with a gaze that seemed less piercing and more curious. "Ms. Brown, before we proceed, I'd like to understand your situation better." He spoke calmly, though the authoritative tone was still there. "Can you tell me about your work and circumstances?" Emma hesitated, feeling everyone's eyes on her. She cleared her throat and began to speak. "I'm a waitress at a small bakery. I work 6 days a week and I also take custom cake orders to supplement my income. I'm a single mother and take care of my daughter on my own." The judge listened attentively, his hands clasped in front of his face. Emma realized that unlike other judges she imagined, He didn't seem to be judging her words, but trying to understand them. "And on the day in question, you said Lily was sick, is that correct?" he asked, looking at the little girl, who was now playing with a strand of hair. "Yes, sir. She had a high fever and I needed to stop at the pharmacy. I didn't realize I had parked in a disabled parking spot. It was a mistake, but I was desperate." The judge was silent for a few seconds. The sound of the clock on the wall seemed to echo throughout the courtroom. "I see," he finally responded, his voice low and thoughtful. "I know the law can seem inflexible, but it exists for a reason. People with disabilities depend on those spots, and disregarding them, even unintentionally, has consequences." Emma's heart sank. She knew he was right, but she couldn't shake the fear of how this would end. "However," Morgan continued, breaking the tension in the air, "the law must also take circumstances into account." The surprise was palpable on Emma's face and in the subtle reactions of the audience. "Ms. Brown, I'll be direct. I have the authority to reduce or even waive the fine, considering your situation. But before I make that decision, I want to ask you a question." Emma nodded quickly, hope struggling to emerge amid her anxiety. "If you had more support, say social programs, resources for single mothers, or even training to improve your financial situation, would you use them?" She was stunned for a moment. It wasn't the question she expected. "Yes, sir, absolutely. Anything that would help me give Lily a better future." The judge tilted his head, as if assessing the sincerity in her words. Then, without further explanation, he made a quick note in his file and declared, "We will resume the hearing tomorrow. I need time to review some things. For today, we are adjourned." Emma stood there, paralyzed, not knowing how to react. Judge Morgan stood up and left the room without further explanation. The people around began to murmur, clearly intrigued by the turn of events. As Emma gathered Lily's things, a mix of relief and confusion filled her thoughts. Something was happening, but she couldn't predict what would come next. Outside the courthouse, Lily looked at her mother with an innocent smile. "Can we have pancakes now?" Emma laughed, feeling the weight of the day begin to lift, if only for a moment. The next morning, Emma still felt the weight of the previous day lingering, but there was something different in the air. Judge Morgan's sudden pause and his decision to delay the case had planted a seed of uncertainty, and perhaps a little hope. As she dressed Lily to drop her off at a makeshift daycare with a neighbor, Emma couldn't stop thinking about what he might be planning. "Review a few things," he had said. What exactly was he reviewing? The courthouse was less crowded than it had been the day before, but Emma felt the same nervousness as she waited to be called. Lily, her boundless energy intact, swung her feet while sitting next to her mother and looked around with curiosity. "Emma Brown, please step forward." The sound of the clerk's voice made her heart race. She held Lily's hand tightly as they walked to the front of the room, feeling every gaze in the room fixed on her. Judge Morgan was already seated, his posture commanding as always. He appeared calm, but there was something in his eyes, a subtle glimmer that suggested something important was about to happen. "Ms. Brown, thank you for returning. As I mentioned yesterday, I've reviewed your case and considered the circumstances. Before we proceed, I'd like to share some information." He paused, glancing around the room, as if addressing a much larger audience than the small group present. "When we enforce the law, our job is not just to punish. It's to ensure that people understand their responsibilities and are given a chance to change." Emma remained still, trying to grasp where he was going with this. "I've gathered information about programs and resources that can help you not only to get through this difficult time, but to build a better foundation for you and your daughter." He handed a paper to the clerk, who passed it to Emma. She looked at the sheet. It listed community programs, free courses, and organizations offering support to single mothers. "I am waiving your $200 fine on the condition that you participate in at least one of these programs over the coming weeks." For a moment, Emma was frozen, unable to process what she was hearing. He wasn't just dismissing the fine, he was offering her genuine help. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Morgan replied, his tone firm but almost paternal. "Just take the opportunity." Before Emma could respond, Lily, who had been quiet until now, tugged on her sleeve and looked directly at the judge. "Do you like pancakes?" The courtroom erupted into soft laughter, and even Morgan, who seemed almost incapable of smiling, allowed a brief grin to break through. He tilted his head toward Lily and replied, "Yes, but only if they have lots of syrup." The room laughed again, and for the first time in weeks, Emma felt a wave of lightness. It was as if the weight of her worries had lifted, if only for a moment. As she left the courthouse, the paper with resources clutched tightly in her hand, Emma realized that something had changed, not just for her, but for the stern, inflexible judge as well. Somehow, Lily's innocence had broken an invisible barrier, and Emma knew this was the beginning of a new chapter in her life. "Can we have pancakes now, Mommy?" Lily asked, her bright eyes full of excitement. "Yes, sweetheart," Emma replied with a genuine smile. For the first time in a long time, she felt that things might actually get better. The sweet smell of freshly made pancakes filled the small apartment, blending with the soft sound of laughter coming from the table. Lily, her mouth sticky with syrup, looked up at her mom with a radiant smile. "These are the best pancakes ever, Mommy," Emma smiled, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in her chest. Though the moment was joyful, she couldn't help but think about the paper Judge Morgan had handed her in court. The names of the programs and courses were etched in her mind like both a promise and a challenge. After Lily fell asleep that night, Emma sat at the kitchen table with the paper in front of her. The dim glow of the lamp seemed to amplify her doubts and fears. What if I can't do it? What if this is more than I can handle? But then Lily's face, so full of hope and joy, flashed in her mind. She knew she couldn't afford to give up. She picked up the phone and began making calls. The following week, Emma's routine began to shift. In addition to her long hours as a waitress, she enrolled in an online advanced baking course, one of the initiatives suggested by Morgan. The classes were challenging, but she felt a small spark of pride every time she completed an assignment. Still, not every day was a victory. The exhaustion began to build. One night, after hours at the cafe and more hours of studying, Emma collapsed at the kitchen table, tears streaming down her face. "Why does it feel so hard?" she thought, as Lily slept peacefully in the next room. The next morning, while serving coffee to a customer at the cafe, Emma felt a familiar pair of eyes watching her. She turned and saw none other than Judge Morgan sitting at one of the tables, his expression neutral but attentive. "Good morning, sir," she said, trying to mask her nervousness. "Good morning, Ms. Brown. I came for 2 reasons. First, I've heard this place serves the best pancakes in town." He paused and a faint smile crossed his face. "And second, I wanted to check in and see how things are going." Emma was surprised by the question. It wasn't common for a judge to care about what happened after a court decision. "I'm trying, sir. The course is great, but it's been hard to juggle everything." "I imagine it is. But remember, real change takes time and effort." He paused before adding, "May I offer some advice?" She nodded, curious. "Don't be afraid to ask for help. No one gets through life doing everything on their own." His words struck a chord in Emma in an unexpected way. All her life she'd learned to carry her burdens alone, but maybe it was time to rethink that. When Morgan finished his pancakes and stood to leave, he left a generous tip on the table and a short note. "You're doing great. Don't give up." That small gesture of support reignited something in Emma. When she got home that night, Lily greeted her with a tight hug, and Emma realized that no matter how hard the journey might be, she wasn't alone. As Lily slept, Emma opened her laptop and focused on the next lesson in her course, determined to keep going, one step at a time. The online course began to awaken something in Emma she hadn't felt in years: passion. Baking, which had once been just a way to pay the bills, was becoming a space for creativity again. The classes introduced techniques she'd never tried before, and with each new lesson, Emma found herself growing more confident. But the routine was still exhausting. At the cafe, she struggled against mounting fatigue, while at home, she juggled her responsibilities as a mother with her studies. One particularly difficult night, Emma received an unexpected email from supporterbakingcourses.com. Subject: Excellent performance in Module 3. The email congratulated Emma on her progress and informed her that she had been selected as one of 3 students for a mentoring session with a renowned local pastry chef. It was an opportunity she had never dared to imagine. The next morning, Emma arrived at the cafe feeling a spark of hope, but fate had other plans. Her manager, a pragmatic woman with little patience, called her into the office. "Emma, we need to talk." Her stomach sank immediately. "I know you've been working hard, but the fact is your attention seems divided. I need someone who's 100% committed here. If that doesn't change, I'll have to reconsider your position." The words hit her like a punch. Emma tried to explain, to tell her manager that she was working hard to improve her situation, but the manager seemed uninterested. "I understand your situation, Emma, but business is business. Think about it." The threat of losing her job hung over her like a dark cloud all day. As she served customers, forcing a smile and delivering orders, the knot in her chest grew tighter. If she lost this job, how would she provide for Lily? But then she remembered the email from the course, and something inside her whispered that it might be time to take a chance. Later that night, after putting Lily to bed, Emma sat at the kitchen table, staring at the course assignments and the note Judge Morgan had left at the cafe days earlier. "Don't give up." Those words echoed in her mind, offering an unexpected sense of comfort. The next morning, Emma made a decision. After finishing her shift at the cafe, she went straight to the manager's office. "I've thought about what you said. I know I haven't been giving 100% here, but it's because I'm trying to build something better for me and my daughter. I'll finish my shift today, but I think I need to focus completely on my course and the opportunities it's bringing." The manager looked at her in surprise, clearly not expecting that response. "Are you sure, Emma? It's not easy to leave something stable for uncertainty." Emma took a deep breath. "I'm sure." As she walked out of the cafe for the last time, she felt a mix of fear and relief. Freedom came at a price, but she knew she was making the right choice for Lily's future and her own. A few days later, Emma attended her first mentoring session with the pastry chef. He was a kind but demanding man, and his guidance opened Emma's eyes to possibilities she had never considered. At the end of the session, he asked her a simple but profound question. "What do you want to do with all of this?" Emma's answer came immediately, as if it had been waiting to be spoken. "I want to start my own business, something that shows people it's possible to turn simple things into something special." The chef smiled. "Then let's work toward that." Emma left that session with more than just knowledge. She left with a renewed sense of purpose. The fear was still there, but for the first time in years, she felt in control of her destiny. As she walked home, Lily ran to meet her at the door, laughing and throwing her arms around her. "Mommy, did you bake a cake today?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Emma laughed, feeling hope blossom inside her. "Not today, sweetheart, but soon, very soon." Mornings were always hectic, but now there was something different in the air. Between making breakfast for Lily and organizing her study materials, Emma felt a mix of excitement and uncertainty. She had left her cafe job behind, putting everything on the line for her course, and the dream of building something of her own. The days were long and exhausting, but they were also filled with small victories. With each completed module and each new technique mastered, Emma saw her dream inch closer to reality. Even so, life didn't stop throwing challenges her way. Bills began to pile up. Without the steady paycheck from the cafe, Emma relied on small orders for cakes and pies to cover the essentials. Still, the money seemed to vanish as soon as it came in. One night, as she went over her finances, Emma found herself on the verge of tears. Despite her progress in the course, the pressure of making ends meet threatened to overwhelm her. She shut her laptop and stood up, trying to stifle her sobs so she wouldn't wake Lily. As she sat on the couch, lost in thought, a knock at the door startled her. Surprised, she glanced at the clock. Who could it be at this hour? Opening the door, she found her neighbor, Mrs. Harris, an older woman who often watched Lily when Emma needed to work. She was holding a small dish covered with a cloth. "I made apple pie today and thought you and Lily might enjoy some," Mrs. Harris said warmly. Emma tried to smile, but her emotions were raw. "Thank you, Mrs. Harris. I don't know what I'd do without you." The neighbor gave her a knowing look, her sharp eyes catching the exhaustion on Emma's face. "Dear, you're working so hard. Sometimes it's good to remember you don't have to carry everything alone." Emma nodded, feeling those words resonate deeply. After Mrs. Harris left, she cut a slice of the pie and sat at the table, As she ate, she thought about Morgan's words and Mrs. Harris's advice. Maybe it was time to ask for help. The next day, Emma decided to pursue one of the programs from the list Morgan had given her. It was a community initiative that connected small business owners with mentors and seed funding. Although anxiety weighed heavily on her, she knew she couldn't let the opportunity slip away. At the community center, Emma was greeted by a woman named Harper, who coordinated the program. Harper listened intently as Emma explained her situation, her ideas, and the challenges she faced. "That's an inspiring story, Emma," Harper said. "I think we can help you turn your passion into a viable business, but I need you to trust the process and be willing to work as part of a team." Emma felt a warmth of hope spread through her. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes," she replied. The following days were a whirlwind. Harper helped Emma draft a basic business plan and prepare to pitch her idea at a meeting with other entrepreneurs and potential local investors. The event was terrifying for Emma. She wasn't used to speaking in public, let alone pitching her ideas. But when she looked at Lily, who was watching from the back of the room with an encouraging smile, she found the courage she needed. "My bakery won't just be a place for cakes and pastries," Emma said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I want to create a space where people can celebrate life's small moments, like pancakes on a tough morning or a cake that brings joy to a special occasion." The room was silent for a moment before a wave of applause filled the space. Although the journey ahead was still uncertain, Emma knew she had taken an important step. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. That night, as she walked home with Lily, Emma thought about Judge Morgan. Without his intervention, she might never have found the courage to dream this big. When they got home, Lily ran to her room, but before going to bed, she looked at her mom and asked, "Mommy, do you think the man from court would like your cakes?" Emma laughed, remembering the small smile Morgan had shown when Lily mentioned pancakes. "I think he'd love them, sweetheart." And with that thought, she felt that the future, though uncertain, was full of possibilities. The days had turned into a frantic dance of challenges and triumphs. Emma worked tirelessly to bring her vision to life. Harper, her mentor from the community program, had become an indispensable ally, helping her fine-tune her business plan and find creative ways to overcome financial obstacles. But the challenges kept coming. Emma's savings were nearly depleted, and although she had secured some initial support through the program, she knew she'd need more funds to open her bakery. Still, the sight of Lily running around their small living room, excitedly talking about how she'd help Mommy in the future cafe, gave her the strength to keep going. One night, as Emma reviewed recipes and spreadsheets, she received an unexpected phone call. "Hello," she answered hesitantly. "Good evening, Ms. Brown. This is Judge Morgan." Emma was silent for a moment, surprised to hear that familiar, stern, yet oddly comforting voice. "Judge Morgan, what can I do for you?" "Nothing, actually. I was thinking about the progress you've made and decided to call to check in and see how things are going." Emma took a deep breath, trying to keep her emotions in check. "I'm trying. I attended an investor event this week and secured some support, but there's still a long way to go." There was a brief pause on the other end before Morgan responded. "Keep going, Ms. Brown. The road isn't always easy, but it's clear you have the determination to see it through." Before ending the call, he added something that caught her off guard. "If you need more advice or support, don't hesitate to reach out." After hanging up, Emma stared at the phone for a few moments. Judge Morgan was a man of many layers, and each interaction with him seemed to reveal a new side of his personality. The next day brought more good news. One of the investors who had attended her presentation decided to support her project, offering an interest-free loan to help cover her initial costs. It was the opportunity she needed to finally rent a small space and start turning her idea into reality. The space Emma found was modest but full of potential. With the help of Harper and some volunteers from the community program, she began cleaning, painting, and setting up the basic framework for what would soon be her bakery. Lily, always by her side, enthusiastically sketched logo ideas for the shop, insisting it should include pancakes because they brought good luck. Emma laughed, but ultimately agreed. While working in the space one day, Emma had another surprise. As she stepped outside to buy supplies, she noticed a familiar car parked across the street. Looking closer, she realized it was Judge Morgan's. He was watching the shop from a distance but didn't approach. Emma hesitated for a moment before crossing the street to speak to him. "Judge Morgan?" He seemed caught off guard, but quickly adjusted his coat and replied in his usual serious tone. "Good afternoon, Ms. Brown. I was just passing by." She smiled, noticing a slight discomfort in his stance. "Well, since you're here, why not come in and see how things are coming along?" Morgan hesitated briefly before finally agreeing. Inside the shop, he surveyed the still unfinished space, the smell of fresh paint mingling with the aroma of cakes Emma had baked that morning to test new recipes. "It's a good start, Ms. Brown. A humble space, but with potential." "It's everything I could ask for," she replied with a smile. "I wouldn't be here without your help, sir." The judge shook his head, glancing away. "I just did my job. The rest was all you." Before leaving, Morgan looked over at Lily, who was drawing in the corner of the shop. "And what about her? Is she ready to be the star of the cafe?" "She already is the star of my life," Emma said, her eyes shining. The judge gave a faint smile before walking out, leaving Emma with a strange sense of gratitude and respect for the man who unexpectedly had become a steadying presence in her journey. Later that night, after putting Lily to bed, Emma sat alone in the small shop, gazing at the empty space that would soon be filled with life. She knew the road ahead would be hard, but she also knew she had found strength in places she hadn't expected. For the first time, she felt like she was truly building something that could change everything, not just for herself but for Lily, and perhaps for everyone who walked through the doors of her bakery. The grand opening of the bakery was scheduled for a sunny Saturday morning. Emma could barely sleep in the nights leading up to the big day. The shop, named Sweet Beginnings, was nearly ready. The shelves displayed meticulously decorated cakes, golden pies, and of course pancakes, the special menu item Lily had insisted on including. Harper helped Emma finalize the details, from designing the menus to training the small team Emma had managed to hire. Lily ran excitedly around the shop, handing out special discount cards she had drawn herself to neighbors and friends passing by. The night before the opening, Emma stayed at the shop late, arranging fresh flowers in vases and double-checking every detail. Sitting at one of the tables, she looked around at everything she had built and felt a mix of nervousness and pride. This wasn't just a physical space, it was a symbol of all the hard work and sacrifices she had made. On the morning of the big day, the first customers arrived even before the doors officially opened. Among them were Harper, her neighbor Mrs. Harris, and several people from the community program who had supported Emma along the way. The small shop quickly filled with laughter, the sweet aroma of baked goods and the sound of plates being served. But the moment that stood out most to Emma was when she caught sight of Judge Morgan stepping through the door. He looked slightly out of place in the warm and casual atmosphere, but Emma walked up to him with a warm smile. "Welcome, Judge Morgan. I'm so glad you came." He nodded slightly, his eyes scanning the room with approval. "I couldn't miss seeing the result of all your hard work, Ms. Brown. Please call me Emma," she replied, her eyes shining with gratitude. Before he could respond, Lily appeared, holding a plate of pancakes topped with a berry compote. "Look, it's the man from court," she exclaimed. "You have to try the pancakes." Morgan, caught off guard, glanced at the plate before allowing a faint smile to cross his face. "I suppose I'll take the recommendation." Emma guided him to a table by the window, where he sat and began to eat. She watched from a distance as he interacted with Lily, who eagerly told him stories about how she had helped her mom pick out recipes. When Morgan finished, he gestured for Emma to join him. "I must admit," he said with an unusually light tone, "these are the best pancakes I've ever had." "That means a lot coming from you," Emma replied, trying not to laugh. Morgan cleared his throat, returning to his more serious demeanor. "You turned a mistake into an opportunity, Emma. Not everyone can do that. So I'm proud of what you've accomplished." His words struck a deep chord, and Emma felt her eyes well up. "I couldn't have done it without the help I received, sir, especially yours." Morgan tilted his head slightly, as if unsure how to respond. Sometimes justice isn't just about enforcing the law, it's about helping people find a better path. Before he left, Morgan turned to Lily and said, Keep taking good care of your mom. It seems she's discovered the secret ingredient for success." "It's love," Lily exclaimed, her smile so wide it even made the judge chuckle. As he walked out, Emma stood in the doorway watching him disappear down the street. Something about the encounter felt like it had closed a chapter, not just for her, but perhaps for Morgan as well. Later that evening, as she cleaned up the tables after a busy day, Emma felt a peace she hadn't known in a long time. Sweet Beginnings wasn't just a bakery. It was a place where stories connected, where small acts turned into big changes. And as Lily slept soundly in a corner, exhausted from the day, Emma allowed herself to dream about the future, knowing that anything was possible. The weeks following the grand opening of Sweet Beginnings were a whirlwind of hard work and accomplishments. The little bakery quickly became a neighborhood favorite, with customers returning not just for the delicious pancakes and cakes, but for the welcoming atmosphere Emma and Lily had created. The shop became a community hub. Families brought their children, students worked on assignments at the tables near the windows, and even busy workers stopped by for a quick coffee and a slice of pie. Emma, always with a warm smile, made it her mission to give every customer her full attention. Amid the bustling routine, Emma noticed something interesting. Judge Morgan had become a regular. He never announced his presence, but arrived promptly every Wednesday morning, sat at his usual table and ordered pancakes with syrup. Although their conversations were brief, Emma began to notice subtle changes in the judge's demeanor. He seemed more relaxed, even occasionally smiling as he interacted with Lily, who had taken to calling him Mr. Pancakes. One day, as Emma cleaned his table after he left, she found a handwritten note. "Thank you for reminding me of what truly matters. Keep inspiring others." The words warmed Emma's heart, and she realized that their connection went beyond a simple act of kindness. The experience in the courtroom had changed both of them in ways neither could have anticipated. But not everything was smooth sailing. One morning, Emma received a formal letter notifying her that the owner of the building housing the bakery had decided to sell the property. The buyer, a large real estate company, planned to convert the space into a new commercial complex. The news hit Emma like a punch to the gut. Desperation threatened to undo all the progress she had made. The bakery wasn't just her livelihood, it was the heart of her new life. Determined to fight, Emma teamed up with Harper and other members of the community program to find a solution. Together, they organized a petition and meetings with local leaders, rallying support to keep the bakery in the neighborhood. Among those who stepped up to help was Judge Morgan himself. While he couldn't intervene directly, his public support brought attention to Emma's cause. "Justice is about more than enforcing laws," he said at a community meeting. "It's about preserving what's valuable to the people." Morgan's speech was powerful and inspiring, and gradually more people joined the fight. Emma's story gained traction in local newspapers, and customers shared how the bakery had become an important part of their lives. As the battle over the property continued, Emma received an unexpected call from one of the investors who had supported her bakery's launch. He offered to help negotiate the purchase of the property before it could be sold to the real estate company. Though the fear of failure loomed, Emma accepted the offer, determined not to give up. With the support of investors, community members, and even Judge Morgan, she managed to secure the funds needed to buy the building. When the news broke, the bakery erupted in celebration. Customers, friends, and neighbors came by to congratulate Emma, bringing flowers, gifts, and heartfelt words of support. That evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, Emma sat alone in the shop, gazing at the small space she had fought so hard to protect. She knew the battle had been tough, but it was a testament to her strength and the strength of those around her. In the end, Sweet Beginnings wasn't just a bakery. It was a symbol of hope, determination, and the human connections that had transformed so many lives, including her own. Sweet Beginnings was busier than ever. The small shop that had almost been taken from Emma was now a cornerstone of the community, a place where neighbors gathered to share stories, smiles, and, of course, pancakes. That Sunday morning started like so many others, with Lily running excitedly around the cafe, helping Emma organize menus and spreading smiles to customers. But this day was special. A surprise celebration had been organized by Harper and other friends to honor Emma's hard work and achievements. While Emma was distracted in the kitchen, Harper gathered customers and neighbors, transforming the bakery into a space for celebration. When Emma stepped out with a tray of cakes, she was met with warm applause. "What's this?" she asked, her voice tinged with surprise and her eyes already brimming with tears. Harper stepped forward, holding a small envelope. "Emma, all of us here have seen how hard you've worked, how much of yourself you've poured into making this place something special. We wanted to thank you for reminding us that no matter how tough the journey, with courage and heart, we can create something extraordinary." Emma opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a gift certificate for a complete renovation of the shop and a note signed by everyone present. "Thank you for bringing joy into our lives. Sweet Beginnings is a home for all of us." She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Only tears of gratitude streamed down her face as Lily jumped up and down beside her, exclaiming, "Now we can make a whole section just for pancakes." Everyone laughed, and Emma finally found her voice. "I don't even know what to say. You're the reason this place exists. Thank you for believing in me when I wasn't sure I could do it." Later that day, when the bakery had quieted down, Judge Morgan appeared once again, as he did every week. This time, though, he carried a small wrapped package in his hands. "We heard about the celebration," he said, placing the package on the counter. Emma smiled as she unwrapped it. Inside was an old recipe book, its pages worn and filled with handwritten notes in the margins. "This belonged to my mother," Morgan explained, his expression serious yet kind. "She was an excellent cook and always said that cooking was the best way to show love to people. I thought you might put it to good use." Emma was deeply moved. I don't know what to say. This means so much to me." He nodded. "Just keep doing what you're doing, Emma. You have a rare gift, something that changes lives." That evening, as Emma closed the shop, she and Lily sat together at one of the tables, sharing a plate of pancakes drizzled with syrup. "Mommy, the man from court really loves pancakes, doesn't he?" Lily said, laughing. "Yes, sweetheart," Emma replied, smiling as she looked at her daughter. "But I think he loves seeing people happy even more." Lily gazed at her mum with her bright, curious eyes. "Just like you, Mommy." Emma felt a warmth in her chest. The journey had been long and full of challenges, but in that moment, sitting with Lily in her bustling bakery, she knew she had found something far more valuable than she ever could have imagined. "Yes, my love. Just like me." And as night fell, Sweet Beginnings remained a beacon of hope, reminding everyone that the best stories aren't written by chance, but through courage, effort, and the transformative power of a simple act of kindness.